I'm Amitai. I will learn all your names afterward. That was a lie.
I'll take that bet.
I know a couple of your names, and hopefully we'll meet some more. Today we're going to do BDD for everyone. This is not going to be mob programming. I'm not going to put anybody on the spot except to help me figure out where I'm stuck. Does that sound cool? Like from your seats, you can heckle me, shout at me, tell me what's stupid, or give me an idea if you're feeling constructive. Cool? Cool. Also, is there a Twitter hashtag for people that want to be tweeting about this? I don't know of one.
I don't have one. Maybe I need to do that. So, okay, I'll get on that. JJ will help me out. Thanks for volunteering, man.
In the meantime, hashtag Agile or whatever, right? Okay.
Yes, absolutely best.
Very well. So, what we are going to do today, in 90 minutes or so, is what BDD, behavior-driven development, is not, because there are a lot of things that are like it but are not it. You're going to see an approximation of what it can be like to do it, and then from that experience, maybe you'll have an idea of what it could be like to apply in your context. So here's some things it's not. It's basically the same as test-driven development. False. It is related, but it is not the same. It's something that programmers do behind the scenes. False. If it's happening behind the scenes and you can't see it, it's not BDD. It's a kind of automated test, right? BDD tests. You can write tests that get used to support a BDD practice, but BDD is not those tests. A software tool, such as Cucumber or SpecFlow or things like that, it is not. That can support your practice. You can also do BDD entirely without it. And that's what I mean, it doesn't require a software tool. It's just a thing that somehow has none of these properties. So, that's pretty clear now, right? We got it? Yeah. What is it? Well, here's some things that are true about it. We're going to get our way to what it is. It is BDD if everybody on the team is doing it together. That is a hallmark of what BDD looks like. Another thing that BDD looks like is when we are concerned with the behavior of the system as a whole. That's something that BDD looks like. The way that we carry this out in practice is a lot to do with the words we use. The way that we can understand what we mean when we talk with each other in BDD about what's going to happen is that we have language that is understood ubiquitously between developers, testers, business analysts, product owners, managers, customers, everybody. And that shared language is key. It can have these two other things, one of which is maybe you turn your understanding into automated acceptance tests, but maybe you don't. And it may be that you get more out of BDD if you use a tool like Cucumber, but maybe not. So now it's super clear, right? I'm just nailing it. Awesome. So, still don't quite know what it is, but how important is it that we really know what it is? If we can use it to work together more effectively, then it could be very important. And if we can't, for whatever reason, then it's very not important. My contention is, with the right preconditions, with the right behaviors, with the right people, with the right intentions, we absolutely can use it to work together more effectively. Do you have to have programmers on your team who are awesome at programming in order to do it? No, and I will be the proof of that tonight. What you do have to have is people who care about their work a lot. It's hard to do it if you don't have that, because it takes an effort on the part of the people involved. The people also have to be willing to say when they don't know something, and they have to be willing to ask for information or people to help get the information, and conversely, to be able to offer that information to people who need it. These are preconditions for BDD. Being an awesome programmer or having awesome programmers is absolutely not. What? What is BDD? Again, so if I do it all by myself, like I'm a programmer in the corner and I'm doing something and whatever it is, it can't possibly be BDD because I did it alone. If we are together thinking and trying and checking and learning and looping around that feedback loop, that could be BDD. That very well could be. It's probably working better even if it isn't BDD. System behavior, small pieces, words we all understand, verify the system with that language, maybe use a tool to help if you want to. That was a fun use of a few minutes, wasn't it? Totally all understand it now. So one of the things BDD does is that it relies on examples. You pick an example of the system behavior you're talking about, maybe you pick a few until you feel like you got the idea of what it's supposed to do, what it's not supposed to do. Maybe I should give an example or something right about now. Who wants to see an example of what the hell I am talking about? Good, me too. So, just before we do that, this is a key practice that is, I would say, a prerequisite to BDD working well, and that is 3 amigos is a shorthand. Yes. And it's a shorthand for, there could be more than 3 roles, but the product owner who has one opinion about what it means to be a valuable story and a ready story and a done story. You have testers who have a lot of opinions about whether the story is ready because we have any idea how to test it, and therefore we could accept that the story should start. Or developers who also have an interest in what done looks like so that it doesn't come back to them. And there may be other people on a team who also have an interest in defining what valuable, ready, and done means. Maybe it's 4 amigos, maybe it's 5. They haven't made that movie yet, so we call it 3 amigos. We are going to do something kind of like that in this room. So I'm going to write some code. It's going to solve a problem. I promise you that I will make a good faith effort to help you understand and trust the code that I'm writing, that it's going to try to solve the problem. Do you promise to help me try to solve the problem? Good, because it's hard to program in front of a room of people. Thank you. Okay, so before we start, I'm going to need 3 groups, 3 amigos. I'm going to need a group of product owners, I'm going to need a group of testers, and I'm going to need a group of developers. If you identify strongly with any one of those roles, pick one of the other 2. Okay? It doesn't matter a lot, but it's fun. Okay, so let's see. We have 6 tables, we have 3 rows. Let's do this. 1 group of testers in the front, 1 group of developers in the middle, and 1 group of product owners in the back. If you have to move, this is a great time to get up and move around. Let's do it.
Actually, most of our product owners are in the back.
If you're real product owners, be something else. Yeah.
Okay, so everybody move around. Yep.
And then introduce yourself to somebody new again while you're at it.
I'll be a tester. Yeah, I can test.
I guess I don't know where I'm moving. This is testing.
So, testers in the front, developers in the middle, product owners in the back. Very good.
I'm not going to remember it. I'm really bad at meetings.
Reza, you don't do enough testing, my friend. No, you need to get up here.
Chair is mostly worked out? Okay. Okay. Very good. So just a practice round. Who's heard of the game of Fizzbuzz before? Let's do this first. Yeah. If you're ready, raise your hand. Very good, very good. Are you ready? Okay. Yes. So, who's heard of the game of Fizzbuzz before? Do you want to explain the rules of Fizzbuzz?
Not really.
Okay, I'll do it. Thank you for being honest. The rules of Fizzbuzz are, first of all, that you have to be applying for a programming job, because otherwise it doesn't matter. Or you could be a kid, like on a long car trip or something. That's like the meta rule of Fizzbuzz. Fizzbuzz itself is a very silly game, if it's even a game, where if the number is 1, you say 1. If the number is 2, you say 2. If the number is 3, you say fizz, because it's a multiple of 3. If it's 4, you say 4. If it's 5, you say buzz, because it's a multiple of 5. If it's 6, you say fizz. Okay, you got the idea. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna count to,
What if it's 15?
what do you think? Uh-huh. Hence the name. So, we're gonna play up to 18. Multiple of 6. This table's gonna say the first number, that table's gonna say the second number. We're gonna go around. Ready?
1,
2, 11 is right, yep. Uh-huh. 13. Talk a little louder. 13. Nice.
17.
Cool. Okay. So now that we know the rules, we should automate that and never do it again.
You played this There's usually alcohol involved with this game, right?
It makes it more challenging. Okay, so we're not going to do FizzBuzz BDD, that was just a warm-up. What we are going to do with behavior-driven development is something called the bowling game, which is an exercise. Usually we use it to illustrate test-driven development. This is a relative of test-driven development, it's behavior-driven development. And I am going to use Cucumber because it illustrates a lot about how this works. And it might be interesting to you to apply when you apply BDD. And we're going to figure out how to implement the bowling game one feature at a time that we know how to do. Like one more complicated part at a time, starting at the beginning, incrementally, where, and this is where Cucumber comes in. So we're going to have 3 things on the screen. There's going to be, on the left, something that looks like English. It's going to say feature, it's going to say scenario, it's going to say given, when, then. But that's just a text file, nothing happens with that. Unless, in the middle, we have something called step definitions, this is a Cucumber term, where we write code that animates what you see on the left, which is called Gherkin. It's a language, it's like a pun with Cucumber. It's that language that you can say given, when, then. And the step definitions cause the given, when, thens to try to exercise something about the actual application code, the bowling game, which we will then have to make pass the test. Sound like it could make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Has anybody done Cucumber before in this room?
Try.
Sweet. I may need your help. Okay.
He's a speaker, so, you know.
Right. So we agreed no new hashtags, so I'll close the slides. This font size is probably nowhere near good. That is really difficult to work with. Is that kind of okay? I'll try again with this size. That's kind of okay. Okay. And I need to empty those files. That didn't work. Why didn't that work? Right. Off to a rousing start.
Programming's hard in front of an audience.
Yes. I think this is where I'm meant to be.
He's a very brave speaker.
Here we go. There's my blank slate. So, first things first. On the left, I'm going to try to write some English about the bowling game. So let me get us started with the notes that I wrote off to the side here. So first things first, this is going to be the Gherkin. That's the language that's written in. We're going to say feature compute bowling score, because that was the assignment here. And the format we can follow here is pretty freeform. This doesn't get exercised at all. So I can write it in Connextra story format if I want to. As a very amateur bowler, I want the score to be computed for me so that all I need to do is pretend I'm aiming. Cool. So this is pretty high level. We're going to break it into scenarios, which are the examples. So let me give us a first example just to show what they can look like, and then I'll start asking you for help. So scenario gutter game. Given a new game, whatever that is, I'm just starting to bowl, call that a new game. When I knock down 0 pins 20 times, then my score is 0. Okay. That's pretty realistic. So, let's run that test. It says successful, but that's because there was nothing for that text to do. So I have to, this is like the glue in the middle. This is what makes this understandable language do stuff. And it itself is written in the implementation language, usually, of the code that you're making the test pass with. So if your application is in Java, you write the feature and the scenario the same, but the stuff in the middle is probably Java and the stuff on the right is definitely Java. In this case, I'm going to use a choice of language to illustrate a point. The point is that you don't need to be able to understand the middle or the right to trust the results of the left, which you can't understand. And to make that point, I'm going to use Perl, because nobody understands it. Yeah?
I know of a very large application that is in Perl.
I've written one, that's why, yeah, okay.
Oh, I know where you can get a job.
We'll talk afterward.
Right now.
Yep, okay, so what has to happen here is kind of a lot of boilerplate, and this is something that would be mildly interesting to programmers in the room. We can talk about it if you're interested. So this is going to do things with the keywords on the left. In other words, what happens when I say a new game? We'll see. What happens when I say when? What happens when I say then? So we need to use Cucumber, which looks like this. And we need to use Perl's unit test framework as well, so we can make some assertions. And then, let's start here. We need to load the program that is the bowling game. So let's just stop right there for a second. We don't have that game. The thing on the right is blank. What's going to happen now if I run the test? Yes, so this is predictably hard to read because it's Perl, but we tried to load the thing called bin game and it can't find it. So this is driven development. Let's make it exist. What is just enough game to make this test pass? Sweet. Still not a very good test, but it does turn green. What we haven't done yet is actually map given or when or then to an action. So we'll do that next. And that looks like, this will look familiar to those of you who have seen regular expressions. So I want to do something with the words, like, let me explain a little bit about Cucumber. We have the word given here, and you can see that it's syntax highlighted. It's a little bit yellow or green because it's a magic word in Gherkin in a Cucumber. The rest of this is plain old English that I just made up and I can say whatever I want, but I do want something to happen when I say that phrase. And to make that be true, I have to match it here. So I'm going to say exactly a new game, starting here, a new game. And when I have a Gherkin scenario that says that, here's what I want to do. I want to make a new game. So let's say we had a class called game or an object called game, and that I can make one. And then I'm going to hang on to the result of that in some context that I have available in step definitions. So what's going to happen if I run this? Because I don't think I have this class yet. I sure don't. So we had a test, given a new game. It tried to execute the step, a new game. And what happened was there's no constructor on the class called game. So again, let's make that be true. Yep.
So back to your console output, why did it say there were 4 tests? Tests 4.
There's another way to run these tests. I'm using the regular Perl test runner. I think if we run it with the Cucumber test runner, we'll see a little better. So this does some highlighting. I think it's an artifact of the Cucumber test output being mapped to the Perl test runner. but let's make a note about that. I think it'll get clearer as we go. Because right now I only think we have, no, I don't have a good theory about that. Let's go back to it. What we have to do to make this test pass is have a way to make a game. And for that, we need to define a constructor. I'm going to skip ahead on some of this. But this is also showing mechanics that are also applicable in test-driven development, where you say a little bit more about what you want the code to do, and then you make it do just that and make sure that everything's still okay. So this is a little bit like test-driven development right now, but once I start asking you for help, it's going to be more like behavior-driven development. So, ARGs, what I'm going to ask you for help with, very shortly, is what scenario to write next. So maybe start thinking about that. I think that's enough. If I say, now I can have a game object, and this code is absolutely wonderful. Okay, so far, we have done something with this line. We have not done something with this line. So we managed to create a game and store it aside for use in a moment if we haven't used it. Next, I need to tell the game that I did this. So, how do I do that? We need something that maps from when. So when, I'm going to say, I'm not going to match the exact phrase, and I would have. I'm going to say some number, this is a regular expression again, some number once or more of pin, possibly with an S. It's a little bit obscure. And then the same idea for the rest of the phrase. Good old English. I think that's right. So again, this has to match the language that's on this side, but it's way more interesting this time. This is cucumber stuff. It's way more interesting this time because I happen to know, and you probably could guess, that when we write more scenarios, I'm going to have a different number here, maybe the same number here, definitely a different number here. And so I want to capture what that number is because I want to use it in my test. Yes?
Should you have 0 to 20 times? Could you bowl 20?
You're saying here?
No, 0 to 20, because aren't you bowling 20 times? I don't know. You tell me.
So Perl is hard to read, but that is actually saying 0 to 20.
Okay.
It's actually saying 0 to anything.
Okay.
Right, it could be that somebody, so this only really matters
Other than 9
for the
pins.
test.
Okay, I got it.
But the Perl code will have to get it right, yeah. So this then should cause Cucumber to think that it has something to do about this. Let's see what happens. Yep, it does. And in the case where there is a when, I want to, let's say, I don't know, local variable whose value is whatever number this was. Call it pins. That's how many pins there were. And a number of times that I rolled. And let's call that whatever number the second one was here. And I guess I have to actually tell the game that I did this rolling at this point. So I guess I would say something like a roll from 1 to the number of times that I said I wanted to roll, and let's roll again. And when I do that, the game that I created in the given, I roll that many pins. So this is really simplistic. I have to get the same number of pins every time I roll, but it should do something. Except, didn't compile because I do have a game class. I was able to make one, but there's nothing called roll. So I guess I better do that. So what's the simplest roll I could make that would make this test pass? The argument that I receive, the first one is the class, the second one is the number of pins. This is how you receive arguments in every single function that you ever write in Perl. And gosh, I guess maybe I need to keep track of my score, but right now I
Not
don't.
to
I
make
could
it
just say
pass.
0.
Do you even need that to make it pass?
Maybe not. You mean maybe just have a role that accepts?
Yeah, like that.
Okay. Cool. Life is good. So this is where it's going to get interesting. Now I'm going to make an assertion. So given, when, then actually maps really nicely to another phrasing that we may have heard from test-driven development, which is arrange, act, assert. Who's heard that before? Yeah, so arrange is do what you have to do to get the preconditions so that you can exercise your code. Act is exercise your code, we just kind of did. And then assert is the thing that's supposed to be true now, true now? And it's exactly the same idea as given, when, then, and then is where we're going to do our assert. So, now I need to be able to say, oops, score is, I could say like exactly my score is, but it's fine. Score is, and we need to do some of this numeric interpolation again, some kind of number looking thing. And when that happens, here's what I want to do. I want to say my expected score is whatever number that was. My actual score is whatever happens when I ask the game for my score. See how that's going to go. And then here's the assertion. I want to know whether the expected score is the same as the actual score. So again, this is going to go poorly in the way that it's gone poorly the last couple times, which is that I don't have a score method. Unless I did worse than that. I did worse than that. Yeah? Oh, yes, thank you. No method called score in package game. Okay. Now I have to be a little bit smart. So I would have to say score, return 0. That ought to do it. Cool, it's the smartest thing I've done so far. Okay, so just to recap, because we've finally gotten all the way through a scenario, and now we're going to get a little more interactive. How are these three things related that we're looking at on the screen? On the left, the next thing we're going to do together is think of another scenario to write, and I'll take your help with it. But that doesn't itself cause anything to happen with our code. We could write as much text as we want on the left. If we never write anything in the middle or the right, it doesn't exercise anything new. We have to make sure that it does. But we can write on the left what we all understand. In the middle, and this is a job for programmers, or maybe you're more advanced testers if they can program a little bit, then you map the English that we all agreed on to something about the program. It's kind of like a unit test hidden in a certain way. You use the same kind of assertions in there. And on the right is the application we're actually developing. That's the code that we're talking about. So how are they related? For example, I'll show how they can, the different ways that they can stop being related to each other. So we have a green situation now, but we can see what happens if we break something. So for example, if I just say, given a game, then I expect that not to match the regular expression that I wrote previously. And so when I run this, that's surprising. Should I save this? That's surprising. Let's run it with the cucumber test runner. That's very surprising.
Wait, why is this?
Better game.
Because you didn't name the same.
Any ideas? Yep.
I don't know why it's running correct.
One possibility is because as long as I can create the game. No, I don't really know why. Let's try this a different way. This I should definitely be able to break. I think I know why that happened. So let's try something else. So when I eat a hamburger. This is really interesting. So this is unanticipated. And this is an example of something that programmers who have been burned before have learned to do. which is make sure everything really depends on each other the way you think it does. Right now, it doesn't seem like
If
it
you
does.
change the 0 to a 1, does it fail?
I think so. That one I think will. Wow. Oh, no, okay, something interesting is happening. Right. So this is, now I remember. This is an artifact of this implementation of Cucumber. I think it's also true in other ones. What is the Cucumber tool supposed to do when you wrote the feature in the scenario, but you didn't write step definitions that correspond? Is that red? Well, no, there was no test to run, so it's not. But you might like to know that there was no corresponding test to run, because that's not what you meant. And so if you use the Cucumber test runner, you can see that it's kind of orange. So, you know, this is the kind of mistake you want to check for and then not make. Let's put that back here. And there is a mode, at least with the Java Cucumber, where you can run it to treat missing step definitions, where there's nothing corresponding to the English as red, and I usually do, because you want to know, right? So this tool doesn't. Another way we could break it is
So now if you change it from 0, does it break?
Yes, I would think so again. Yeah, so we got 0, we expected 1. Yeah, so do you have a hypothesis about what's happening now?
It's working.
Okay, good. So a symmetrical way to break that is we expected 20, 0. That's green again, right? Yes, good. Another way to change that should definitely work for sure is this is not 0, and that's red. So those two things depend on each other. The dependency on the step definitions can be harder to debug, which is why it's important to be very conservative about how you write. And that's one more way that this could break. So again, back to green. Another way this could break is if we do something silly here, like mix up these arguments, that probably doesn't actually affect the outcome in this sense, but maybe if we said actual score plus plus, and that's just a logic error in the step definition now, and then the result is different. So you really want your step definitions to be short, and you want the regular expressions to be as few and far between and basic as you can, and check very carefully that it's hooked up, and then don't change it real often there. Where you really want to do most of your thinking is over here, which is what we're about to do, and in your application. And in fact, pretty soon we'll get to where we have enough step definitions that I can close that, and we can keep adding scenarios without it. So, I've done a lot of talking and a lot of typing, and this is a lot of Perl. Let's think about what might happen next in this game. So we
I've
have,
never seen this much pro code at one time.
yeah. Yeah, I have sympathy for those of you who have, and for those of you for whom this is the first time. So, we're going bowling. I'm not very good, so this covers a lot of the scenarios that matter. What would be another very simple case, very similar to this one, but a little bit different?
Perfect game? But not for an amateur, I mean, no amateur bowler.
Yes.
Professional bowler.
I would argue that's a lot different. It's similar in the sense that you get the same roll every time, but it's a lot different in how the scoring works. And I'm looking for something
Not all 10
that
pins.
doesn't test our understanding about scoring yet, because the reason that I happen to want this is that I happen to know that I was really lazy when I implemented this, and I want to do a little bit of thinking next, but not a lot.
Not all 10 pins.
Because you've seen how well it's been going so far.
Knock down 1 pin, 20 times,
Yeah.
you guys score 20.
Okay.
Is that 10?
So what I heard was if I knock down 1 pin 20 times, then I get a 20. That sounds pretty good.
I like that.
Yeah. That's also a thing that could happen. Could. So, let's write that scenario.
Sorry, what was the scenario?
The scenario next is I'm going to get 1 pin 20 times.
Okay. Did the devs and the product owners agree with that?
That's a good point. So, we heard the suggestion from the test group, which I appreciate because you picked something that will be relatively easy to test. Right now, I really want that. Developers, do you feel like that's a manageable amount of work to bite off in the next story, so to speak? Or would you rather it be smaller, or would you rather it be bigger? you feel like you understand what the story is, like how you might go about implementing it?
As long as it's 4 or less, you're good.
Yeah? Okay, and then product owners. Does this satisfy your need to move a step toward a bowling game that scores for you? Or do you wish it was a bigger step? Or do you wish we define this more precisely? Let's define it, and then we'll see. So we're saying all ones, right? So given what?
A new game.
A new game. When
I knocked out one pin.
One pin,
one
20
thing
times.
20 times, then my score is 20. What's going to happen when I run this?
It's gonna fail because you have to change something.
It's gonna pass.
Devs, what's he gonna do when he runs it?
Yes.
Devs?
What am I going to get instead of 20 for the second scenario?
Oh, it's gonna fail.
Yeah, I was really lazy. It's going to bite me now. So let's see. Yeah, so we did okay. We still have this number 4. We'll figure it out in time. But there was a test that said then my score is 20. And it wasn't that, it was 0. So right now we understand what our code is doing well enough to have made a correct hypothesis about what would happen when we asked for it to do something new. This is actually a really important point. In TDD and in BDD, both, we're trying to work in small enough steps that our current understanding of what the code does do is very likely correct, so that we can form a likely hypothesis about what the code will need to do that is also very likely correct. And also at the same time, we have these automated tests in case we're wrong. So if it turned out that it did pass, then we would be sitting here scratching our brains thinking how that's possibly true. But we would have all the information in front of us, and just a minute ago we were in a clean state. So if we can't figure it out, go right back to that, think about it again, think about our model, try another idea. So this is actually a really common thing to think about. What do you think the next test is going to do? Should it fail the way we think it should fail? Let's see. And it did. So great. So I'm just going to change this to 20, and that'll fix that test. Oh.
It will fail the other two.
It sure did. Yeah. Okay, so, a little help. Developers, maybe?
Dollar pins.
Okay, so maybe like actually receive the parameter pins and then return it? Okay. I like that idea. So I happen to know that I need self because that's the object itself, but then the next argument is pins, and then return that. That looks plausible. Whew! Uninitialized value
20.
in the step definition is line 27. What's that?
See, now you product owners, see, it's tough what these guys do, isn't it?
That's right. Okay, so let's look more exactly at what happened. The expected part was not defined. So we expected 20, and what we got was not a number of any kind whatsoever.
There is no pin. You're making up stuff on line 15. That doesn't exist.
Yes, so I think what you're saying is when I asked there to be a score method in my step definition test, I didn't have any numbers that I was passing to it, and so there aren't going to be any coming into it. So this wasn't it. So let's go back to return 0, and that should be failing the same way it was before. Yes. Okay, any other ideas? How can I get the first scenario to still be 0, but the second scenario to be 20?
Can we do a if else? Simple if else.
Okay, what would we do if which?
What was the question?
Oh, yes, that's right. The question was, can we use if and else? And I think we could.
What is that?
If one thing is true, for instance, if the number of pins has been 0,
The score is 0.
then return 0, otherwise return 20, something like that? Okay, someone want to help me think about where to put that?
Case?
Easy state. The game needs to be able to remember something.
Okay, so you mean like when I call roll with a number of pins, maybe I should hang on to it? Yeah, so I said in the when condition.
Well, you can just say if roll is not 0, then the score equals 20.
Okay. So we'll hang on to the rolls. We'll say that we have, I'm going to write this in Perl. Gotta look at my notes.
Total or something like that.
Just looking at how to have a property on the class, right? So here's what we'll do. We'll say self roll, and we'll start that at 0. And then in here, we'll receive the number of rolls, pins, excuse me. And then we'll say self roll equals pins.
No, no, no.
No?
I said if pins is not 0, then it equals 20.
Pass
Okay.
in the current score.
No, no, just
But where will I get pins from?
pins you're getting on 13,
Yep.
and then do an if statement and
Oh,
say
okay.
if
I think-
pins is not equal to 0,
So you're getting ahead because roll
Then-
doesn't return anything, score returns something.
no, we're just setting roll there equal to 20, and then we return roll and
Oh,
score.
okay, okay. So maybe I should call this score.
No, I'm okay with roll.
Yep. Okay, so if pins is 20?
Is
20?
not equal to 0.
Is not 0. Not equal to, is that?
That should work.
Why does it matter if they're 0? You can still add 0 to this.
Because I know the first one is 0, and the second one is not.
It's kind of cheating though, isn't it?
No, that's just fine. That's very
Didn't
good.
you ask me to cheat?
Yep.
I feel I'm cheating well.
So if pins is not 0, roll is 20.
Good point.
Otherwise, is this what you had in mind?
I don't even need an else.
It's not a matter of how well you play the games, it's whether you win or lose, right?
Is this the idea you're going for?
I don't need an else, just,
Yeah, you-
Okay. Just looks up. Oh, we already have it. Yep, we already defined that here. Okay.
and then return rolls on line 20.
I'll need to do a little more to make that possible, but that's fine. Just say self, and we'll return self rolls. Do people kind of see how this might work? That when we knock down some number of pins, we'll call roll with that number. And if it's 0, when we call roll, then we don't set anything to 20, which means it's 0 because it started at 0. Alternatively, if we pass in something that isn't 0, then we will set roll to 20, and then when we ask what it is, which I should type the same way, then we'll get it.
It's where is the roll coming from?
Interesting. So it seems like we have different ideas of what we expect at this point. Who expects that this will pass the first test? Okay, that we'll get 0 when we roll zeros. Who expects that this will pass the second test, that when we roll 1 we'll get 20?
Come on.
Who
raise
does
your
not
hand.
know what to expect?
Okay.
Perfect. So this is, again, this is why I chose Perl. It's a little hard to see what's going on here, but we learned to trust the cucumber test, and so if it passes, it's probably fine, and if it fails, it's definitely not. Let's see.
Do we trust it?
Yeah, we can check, we can test some more.
0 failed, 20 failed.
Yeah, so we had a syntax error at line 21 or 22. I must have done something silly somewhere. And I did. It's that. Of course.
Oh, that's obvious.
Hey! All right, and let's run it with Cucumber Runner just in case.
Hey.
Look at all that green and no orange and no red. This is great.
Okay.
Cool.
Now,
What about that was confusing? I feel like some stuff about that was confusing. Yeah.
let's see it. Everything.
Okay. Everything.
Now, what if we were going to try to build out an entire product? What are some of the scenarios we might want to go through and create, and how would we go about doing that? It's also 7:15. Did you say you wanted to stretch?
Yes.
For a minute? Or-
Let's take a break, because most of that was me typing and not a lot of it was us collaborating. Let's just take 5 minutes.
Did I stretch?
Water,